the Australian silver crisis. Martin North, John Adams, in the interest of the people. Hello, John.
Hello, sir.
Well, we're back again and talking silver once again.
We are. A lot has happened in a week and a half. A week and a half ago, we recorded our last show about exposing the synthetic silver scam. A lot of activity has happened. Now, I should say that this week, I've given 5 very detailed interviews about issues relating to the Perth Mint, and we have another scandal or another allegation made against a large private sector provider in the Australian context, ABC Bullion. Now, we're going to just touch over some of these key points just so that our audience are aware of some of the key things, and we're going to reveal some new information which I found out in the last 24 hours, which I haven't been able to discuss, and that is the terms and conditions of Perth Mint. And some of their products have been amended, and customers have not been notified. So I think for those of our audience who are sort of Perth Mint clients and who have been engaging with the Perth Mint, I think it's important that they are aware of some of these changes because they have a direct impact on their financial position.
And just to underscore a couple of things, the first is, of course, we're making a distinction between physically holding silver and then a sort of a halfway house and then unallocated silver. That's the first point. And we made the point the other day, it's not all the same, right? You have different rights in those 3 different scenarios, right? Second point is, I've had a number of people contact me after our last show saying, well, you, John Adams, you've got a bit of vested interest here because of the physical silver relationship that you have, and therefore you're spruiking buying physical silver over the others. It probably is worth just wrestling with that for a second before we get into the detail.
Sure. So if the allegation is that I will financially benefit if the price of silver goes up, guilty is charged. That I've never denied. And I've been buying silver since 2017. And to be honest, the reason why I've been buying it is because of a lot of the content that we've been discussing on the show, which is this extraordinary monetary policy in terms of stimulus, the fiscal stimulus, the stagflation, the accelerated stagflation. So I take the macro concept, the macro view, and then I think, well, how does that influence portfolio allocation? And gold and silver has been a part of my allocation and heavily into silver as well.
Yeah. And, what I think we are saying, John, is people should get informed and then make informed decisions about what they do, right? Rather than just taking high-level assurances from whoever it may be about the way things work, right? And what the interest of the people is about is peeling back the onion layer and getting to the heart of the issue, right? And I would argue we're doing precisely that with silver, irrespective of your long position on silver and your expectation that it will go up very strongly and then you'll be able to retire.
Yes, indeed. And so the reason why we've called this show about a crisis is because in both situations with Perth Mint and ABC Bullion, there are allegations of both organisations failing to deliver on their commitments. And obviously, in our last show, we talked about counterparty risk. And that risk is the counterparty not delivering. Well, we have allegations of that, and I think that's important to actually delve into some detail in this show.
Right, and again, I think we should be very clear here. We are not making those allegations. We are saying there are allegations out there that people have made, and therefore it's important that actually people, again, do their own work and understand what's going on.
Well, I mean, what I will say is that in relation to the Perth Mint, I have made specific allegations on social media, and we're going to get into that because that's what actually caused the issue.
Folks. So lawyers, it's John Adams, not Martin North, right? If you want to sue anybody, it's John Adams.
There we go. But one thing I will say is that I have been in contact with a number of industry sources over the last 48 hours, and a lot of the interviews I've been doing on multiple platforms, including this show, about the counterparty risk with synthetic and the importance of holding physical, that has led to a sea change of behavior among silver investors in this country, as well as gold investors to a lesser extent. So there is so for those organizations who offer these products into the market, I have been told by reliable sources there is a stampede to dump these products, these synthetic, unallocated, pull allocated ETF sort of products, and people are now going to their various dealerships and saying, okay, I don't want this anymore. Either give me cash back, or I want to convert to physical silver. So we are clearly seeing a direct relationship between me and other people talking about this issue and people moving their money with it, and obviously moving with their feet.
Yeah, and more broadly, the question of allocated versus unallocated isn't just silver, right? The gold sector is also the same sort of conversations, and that's, of course, driven by the Basel III changes. And we know that some of the big bullion banks around the world are busily trying to essentially get out of the unallocated and into the more physical end of the gold spectrum, because it actually helps them from a Basel III perspective. So this whole question of allocated versus not is actually a bubbling issue, not just in Australia, but globally, and it impacts more than just silver.
Of course. Now, what I can say is that I am trying to keep a bit of a running tally as to my success rate in converting synthetic products into physical.
Right.
So I'm probably tallying about 15 tons now.
Okay.
So there have been some very large players, both here and overseas, who have listened to some of my explanations, and they've actually decided to move their investments. And again, I take no benefit from those shifting, but that will, in the context of the silver squeeze, which we've been doing a series of shows on, the movement of funds from synthetic to physical will actually have a material effect on the market, and that will have a interesting downward stream effect over the next few months, I believe.
Yep. Well, we will watch the price with interest. Anyway, let's get on with the specifics, shall we, of the various entities in Australia and what they've been up to.
Indeed. Now, so in relation to the Perth Mint, now we recorded our show about a week and a half ago. Last weekend, I decided to put out a tweet because I was hearing, quite a few stories of people with these synthetic products at the Perth Mint saying, okay, I want physical, and they were basically just getting roadblocked. And I had heard from a whole host of other sources that it was basically near impossible to get silver out of the Perth Mint. So let's just put the first tweet up. So I basically put this up on the 20th of March, and I basically said, in the past 24 hours, I'm hearing horror story after horror story from Perth Mint clients. Clients with synthetic positions are staying for delivery and being told there is no silver. The Perth Mint have defaulted. Now, to be honest, Martin, I thought maybe a couple of people would read, because lately my tweets have not been highly popular. but this particular tweet caught people's attention, and as of this morning, 366,000 people have actually looked at the tweet, and we actually have a screenshot of the impressions just to show the audience that it actually ran right around the world. So a whole host of the big figures in the precious metal industry were retweeting. Wall Street Silver picked it up, and that then obviously led to media interest, and that led to the CEO of Perth Mint being forced to give an interview on in terms of ABC local radio in Perth. And the context of that interview was, has the Perth Mint defaulted? Well, who was the first person who used the word default? And that was me. Now, why did I use the word default? It is because that, according to the Perth Mint website, if you have a synthetic product, it does say on the website that they will deliver physical within 10 days. Now, I clearly want to put this up on the screen for people to have a look, because people have been slightly confused on this point, and the CEO of Perth Mint clearly was trying to change what this table actually means. So if we look at the table, if you look at the last line, it says deliverable in, if you have allocated, which is your property being held, 2 days, pull allocated, unallocated, 10 days. I was hearing from multiple Australians watching the show, can't get it in 10 days. And that was the context of me using the word default. Now,
just one question. The 10 days, when does that count actually start from? That seems to me the critical question. Is it when you ask for it?
Well, I mean, so I think you have to ask for it, and then there are some fees that must be paid.
Yes.
And then at that point, then they can start the 10 days.
Right. So the clock starts at the point when the fees that you've asked, you've paid the fees, and then basically the clock starts from that point.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, that was my understanding.
Yeah.
But what I was hearing from a number of clients was they wouldn't even commit to being able to give any silver. So not even to the point of, okay, these are the fees you must pay. We don't have any silver to give you, therefore you're not going to pay. We're not going to take any funds from you. And that obviously was a huge roadblock, because there's an expectation that with these products you can easily convert into a physical silver position.
Right. So what you're saying is, if they refuse to take your fees, the clock doesn't ever start.
Martin, that is my understanding. But when you have a counterparty who says, I have no silver to give you, whether you pay fees or not, I mean that seems to be a default, because the essence of these products is that if you want to convert to physical, there is a seamless process to be able to do so. And a number of people just were told that it cannot be done. Now, there were, and we're going to get into this shortly about what the CEO of the Perth Mint said, but there were a number of public reasons why it was said, but behind the scenes, those reasons just did not stack up to relative to the information I had been told.
Right. And just to be clear again, John, the expectation always was that there was a path that you could travel over a certain set time to end up with physical silver if you wanted to.
Yes.
Right? And that was part of the value proposition of buying into those unallocated propositions.
Indeed.
Right. Now what you're saying is, well, hang on a moment, it might not be as straightforward as people think.
Yes, yes. And so now the question is, why isn't it straightforward?
Yep.
One may say they may be short on silver. They say they have plenty of silver. It is an issue of that the silver is in a particular form, these 1,000-ounce bars, and they don't have the manufacturing capacity to melt those bars into smaller products. Now, 2 points on that. The first one is that there were numerous people asking for 1,000-ounce bars, and they were being told it's difficult to get to you. So if they were swimming in these bars, certain clients who I was talking to, they just said we can't provide them within the time frame. So that's point one. But in terms of point two, I received an email in the last 48 hours, and all of a sudden, the Perth Mint has actually changed their production line. What are they producing? They're producing small bars in response to the public pressure. So on the one hand, they said we can't do it because we're producing gold, we're doing other things, and all of a sudden they're pumping out kilo bars like you wouldn't believe. So so a bit of public pressure can go a long way with these people.
And just to be clear, John, the Perth Mint, it's a private entity, but it does have a connection with the Western Australian government, doesn't it?
Well, so I would define it as a government business enterprise.
Right.
So it is wholly owned by the government. So I wouldn't say it's private. So it's independent.
Yes.
Because it's a standalone corporate entity, but it is a public entity.
So does that mean that the WA government has some accountability for this too, then?
Well, so the WA government has basically underwritten the liabilities of the Perth Mint. So if there was ever a question of insolvency, they will write a check. Now, some people have taken that on face value and say, well, no matter what happens with the Perth Mint, the WA government's going to step in. One of the questions I continually ask investors when they put this to me is, have you actually examined the balance sheet of the WA government and actually assessed the quality of that guarantee? Because the Western Australian government has been racking up debt for the last 15 years, and obviously in the last 12 months with COVID, there's been a massive expansion of the balance sheet.
Well, maybe that's why they need more GST.
Potentially. But now the other thing is that the Western Australian also came out and wrote a story,
yes,
and said Mint versus the conspiracy theorists. And where have we heard this again? 2019, Aaron Patrick of the AFR calling you and I conspiracy theorists. So it is the same playbook that I have continued to see. You, particularly with this financial sector in this country, you start to ask questions, you start to prod and poke, and then they just basically say, oh, you have no credibility, you're a conspiracy theorist. And yet, we have multiple examples, and it's not just me. A lot of Perth Mint clients were either posting their own stories on Reddit on Wall Street Silver, and they were taking screenshots and just showing clear examples of the actual story being different to the official narrative that they were being put out. What I should say is that in regards to this interview that the ABC did, ABC Local Radio, and the Western Australian, I contacted both the presenter and the newspaper journalist, and I said there's a different side to the story. Would you like to hear my side? Never heard anything back.
Right.
And to my mind, it seems like it was a fixed narrative. They pushed it out to calm everything down, and they were not willing to actually do the role of proper journalism and actually say, well, let me talk to all the parties involved and see, well, what are different people saying and experiencing, and who's actually more correct than not.
Right. So the ABC interview, was there anything really significant in that interview?
So Martin, I thought there was two things that were very important. The first thing is that there was this claim that we have 60 tons of silver available for sale, so obviously people, there's an expectation. We have some coins, we have 1,000-ounce bars, we're swimming in silver, we have a backing for all of our products. Everyone should be calm. And yet, one of the things I've been saying throughout the last few days is I have a wholesaler in Australia ready to buy 1 tonne in 1,000-ounce bar form to ship it across to Victoria to melt it down into retail products if there is an operational problem at the Perth Mint, and yet the Perth Mint will not sell him any silver of these 1,000-ounce bar form. So people are ready to do deals, and that hasn't happened. And I have a number of investors who have been willing to take 1,000-ounce bars for looking in a whole host of situations. And on some days, they have been told no silver. On other days, they have been told there is some silver. So there's an inconsistent message there. Now, in some of the interviews I've done, which are swirling around the internet, I've given very specific examples of very specific people. We won't go through that there. But clearly there is a inconsistent message between what we're being told by the leadership and what people are experiencing. Now, the other thing I wanted to highlight is that this issue of the 10 days. The CEO of the Perth Mint, Richard Hayes, said that the 10 days relates to quotation and arrangement of freight costs. Now, that's not what... So the table we just showed before, it doesn't say that. It says deliverable in 10 days. Now, having worked in this industry for almost 3 years, it doesn't take 10 days to arrange a quote and to arrange freight costs. For the most complex transaction in this country, 2 days max. So the fact that he basically said, and he said, people have misunderstood what our terms and conditions mean. It actually means X, but the terms and conditions don't actually mean what he said. It actually is quite clear on the website that we put up. It is 10 days. So I feel justified, even though I did receive some flack in some quarters by using the word default. I think my interpretation is quite fair. I think I can read English quite well, and it says deliverable in 10 days. So you've got to come within 10 days. And we're going to actually go into some changes the Perth Mint have made in the last 72 hours that actually prove that what I was saying was true and what the Richard Hayes was saying on radio was basically false. Now, one of the startling things, and it was actually quite comical, just to show how dire the position of the Perth Mint was in the silver community, in the silver market, was that by about Tuesday of last week, they took down all of their retail bar products, and they basically just presented a blank web page. And so let's put that on the screen. And so what we're just showing on the screen is basically what happened. And people are saying, well, if you're swimming in silver and you're not willing to show any products, you're not willing to take any orders, you're not willing to give any guidance about production, do you actually have the silver, or is there, or do you actually have an incompetent CEO who doesn't actually understand how to run a mint? So the fact that, that was pretty shocking that you'd have a web page with no product on there, for one of the largest and the most premier mints in the world. So it was quite embarrassing that happened, and that obviously spread like wildfire on social media.
So did they fix it up later, or is it still blank?
To the best of my knowledge, I'm aware that there have been some products that have been listed, but we'll obviously have to see how things develop, because I as I understand it, it's a day by day proposition as to what product in what form.
Right. So it comes and goes and changes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Now we're going to get into some of the big revelations I found last night. Now we're recording on Sunday. I was up to 2 a.m. last night, trying to go through a number of documents. And what did I find? That the program that the Perth Mint run, which is their depository program, it is considered like any other financial product. So they have to have a product disclosure statement, and in the last 72 hours, they made a very key amendment to that. Now, if John Adams was a conspiracy theorist that the Western Australia says, and there was nothing to this issue, why would they change their own legal documentation? Now, they actually changed the website as well, and they've actually said a number of important things that customers perhaps won't know, because customers haven't been informed as of yet that the legal position of the Perth Mint has changed, and so basically their commitment to clients and the market has been altered very quietly, but they are quite material. We're just going to put this on the screen. Now, I'm not going to read this, but basically there's a key paragraph. So when it comes to delivery, so the key point is when you want the silver, they actually put in a extra paragraph on page 16. Now, so you can see, if you go onto the Perth Mint website, you can see that there's a March 2021 version, and they've included a specific paragraph on page 16 that wasn't there in the 2020 version. And that paragraph basically says it may take longer than 2 or 10 days to actually come up with the silver. So that's obviously some wiggle room. So now that they've put this in their formal legal document for their financial product, no one can say that they're in default of their obligations, because now they've put in an extra paragraph saying, well, we will try, but we may not be able to.
Right. Interesting question, of course, is it retrospective, right? What about all those people who bought earlier on under the old terms and conditions?
Well, I mean, to be honest, that's a very good question. Perhaps we'll never know unless if someone actually decides to take legal action against the Perth Mint. But obviously, as of now, going forward, I just spoke to a couple of people today who intend to call the Perth Mint tomorrow. If they call tomorrow and saying that you have some sort of time constraint obligation, that obligation has now ceased. And now the Perth Mint has wiggle room. So here's the thing: if it is an operational problem, they have time to rectify that. If it is actually a problem of a lack of silver, they have more time to come up with the silver, and they can play for time. Now, one of the other important changes is that this table that we presented earlier in the show, the table is still up there on the relevant website, but it actually has a little note at the bottom, and let's put that on the screen. It says, note that delivery times are subject to production lead time constraints. So obviously they're again trying to give themselves wiggle room. So it's deliverable in 10 days, but if we have a problem coming up with the silver for whatever reason, now again, if they don't, so they say it's a production issue and they have the silver. Again, that has to be tested as to whether that's correct or not, because we're going to get into a reason why I think that may be a dubious reason. But if they have any problem coming up with the silver, they're just going to say we have it all. We just have an issue in terms of producing it, and so because of that, just give us more time. Now, again, we know right across the silver market around the world in the physical market, there are stress. It's hard to buy. It's hard to acquire in large quantities. So now the Perth Mint may have it all. The Perth Mint may be struggling to get it, but it may not wish to reveal that to the market. So it may be just a very convenient excuse that there is an issue with production constraints.
Okay.
Now on another web page. So we're going to put up another screen, Martin. So they put up a couple of asterisks. So when it comes to the delivery and collection procedures, it says subject to stock availability and production lead times, and at our sole discretion. So basically they're saying that we can. So even though we have a commitment, even if it's about stock availability or production lead times, at the end of the day, at our sole discretion means at our sole discretion. Yep. So if we don't want to actually do the deal, if we don't want to actually meet our obligation and give you silver, we don't have to. And that I think is quite material. And if these shortages across the global market actually become more acute, this issue of the Perth Mint being at their sole discretion of denying people silver, I think that's going to become a more important issue that customers of the Perth Mint are going to actually face. Now, the other thing is that, and here's a critical point, Martin. So there's a section in there that says, can I convert between storage types? So just to go back to our last show, so if you buy actual physical silver product and you store it at the Perth Mint, that's allocated. Yep. Unallocated is a stockpile of raw silver that's part of their working production, and pool allocated is you buy an interest or a share of a pool of silver, which is in 1,000-ounce bar form. Now, this pool allocated issue is to my mind quite critical, and I'll be writing to the Perth Mint to actually get their formal explanation. But it says this: in the case of unallocated metal or pool allocated metal, clients wishing to take delivery must first request that their precious metal be converted to allocated. Note that some products may be temporarily unavailable from time to time due to production lead time constraints. Now, couple of important points with this, Martin, is the first one is that throughout the past 7 days, there have been restrictions of clients with synthetic product to convert to allocated. So, and again, I had someone on Wednesday last week call me up and said that he had about 10,000 ounces of unallocated silver at the Perth Mint. Call them, can I go to allocated? We're not going to allow you to go to that. So the fact that they're saying that you can't get into any silver unless if you jump through this step, and now investors are saying for the last week, well, we're going to deny you that step in a lot of cases. That's a big question. The other thing I think is troubling to my mind is this pool allocated product. Now, pool allocated, like I said, it's backed by 1,000-ounce bars. Now, I had someone who had 3,200 ounces who watches this show, and he says, okay, well, if these are backed by 1,000-ounce bars, I don't need small bars. Give me 3 1,000-ounce bars. No, you may not have them. Well, why not? Something about the way the warehouse is structured. I mean, some BS excuse like that. Now, if these bars actually exist, and here's the thing, look, the Perth Mint actually doesn't present any photographic evidence that these bars are sitting there. If someone says, I have pool allocated and I actually want 1,000-ounce bar, if they have 60 tons of this stuff, just get one out of the pool and give it to a customer. So far, that has not happened. Now, I spoke to someone this afternoon who has 20,000 ounces in pool allocated at the Perth Mint. And I said to this person, call them tomorrow and just say, well, I'll take the 1,000-ounce bars. If they're sitting there in the warehouse, there should be no reason why you just can't give them to me in a few days, and we'll just arrange freight and in terms of all this sort of stuff. So now there are other providers in Australia who have pool allocated, who if you call up and say, okay, I want physical, they will give you physical straight away. So the fact that the Perth Mint is saying, we're going to make you jump through a hoop, and even if you want this 1,000-ounce bar form, which we say we have got piles and piles of it, we're just not going to give it to you straight away. There is something very fishy about this, to my mind, and I'm going to be writing to the Perth Mint to actually understand, well, what is this all about? So
it seems to me, John, that they're moving further and further away from certainty.
Yes. So they've got a lot of fuzzy language, and that's given them a lot of wiggle room. But it also, it does definitely open up a lot of more questions. But it comes back to what I was saying before, Martin. If I'm a conspiracy theorist, if John Adams has no basis to say this stuff, why put all these changes in there? And why are we getting stories which are just not coming to me, but are actually being aired on social media, which is giving a very different narrative to what Richard Hayes has been telling in terms of the press? And why won't the press talk to me? I mean, I don't think I'm that harmless. I mean, you and I have been talking since 2018. I've never bit your head off, have I?
No, I've still got my head on.
Indeed. Now, where I just want to finish this show is because, so we're talking about the Perth Mint. Now we're going to get into this issue about the ABC bullion,
right?
Because I have been asked about this by a lot of foreigners, because this has been blowing up all over social media. Now, We have to be careful about how we describe this because there are some serious legal issues here. But the key point I just want to highlight for the audience is that we are seeing a lot of customers, a lot of investors across the country who are saying, okay, now I understand the difference between physical and synthetic. I'm going to physical, and I'm going to, in most cases, store it with a counterparty. Now, in our last show, I talked about storing it here, here at your studio, and you would be the custodian, and the counterparty risk is not that I don't own anything. No, I own anything, but when I want it, you don't have it. Now, there are two types of ways that this scandal around allocated storage happens. One is, for example, is if you were a dealer and someone who vaults, and I gave you money and you never bought the silver, for example, and when I asked for it, it wasn't in the vault because you never bought it. Now that in the last decade has actually happened, and Morgan Stanley got caught out on that. They took a lot of investor money, said that we're going to pay storage fees and insurance. And there's going to be silver in the vault, and they never bought the silver. They actually did something else with the money, and they had to pay hefty compensation for that. Now, the other type is that, and so even, for example, Martin, in the late 1970s, in the last in the huge silver bull market as well as gold bull market, a lot of dealers, particularly in the United States, did the following. For example, I have my property in your possession. Not only are you vaulting, but you are selling to the public. You are running out of stock because it is in high demand. You have customers coming to you wanting to buy gold and silver, and you shouldn't have the stock. So what you do is you take people's property, which you are holding in custody, and you sell it to someone else on the hope that when you get your next shipment from your manufacturer, that you can just put it back in the vault and no one will ever know. And so that has historically happened. And that's the other type of counterparty risk when it comes to allocated storage. Now, importantly, you and I talked about that latter part in 2018 when we did our first gold show. So Eric Sprott made some allegations with his team that gold sitting in the Bank of England that they were holding for other central banks was being leased out to bullion banks, to going to Switzerland and melting down and being sold right across the world in order to suppress the price. And they were using leasing arrangements to cover this up, and that the gold's not actually there. So that's the allegation. And so it's a really powerful clip. So I think we should just replay it for our audience just so they can remember, for those who have been watching us since 2018, about what that allegation is.
The way that was done is that there would be an armored car. It would take it to Stansted Airport. That would then be flown to Switzerland. It would be re-refined in a refinery in Switzerland, which then produced little bars and big bars, which were then turned into jewelry, which was then hanging on the women of the world, right?
Yeah, and it still poses the same good question that it did then.
Indeed. And so obviously the question is all the gold in the Bank of England? Now, we will be doing a show very shortly where we're going to actually come back to that question, because there is some movement in Parliament to basically come to some sort of conclusion about Australia's gold and whether Australia's gold should be in Australia or whether it should remain in the Bank of England. But in the context of this silver crisis, again, without wanting to get into any legal jeopardy, is there have been social media posts, two in particular, in which they make claims that would suggest that Perth Mint and ABC Bullion are running, they are running some sort of allocated storage system inconsistent with their legal obligations. I think that's the best way to phrase it, Martin, unless if you've got something else to say.
Well, we're not saying it. We're simply saying that there are allegations out there, right? And what I always say is it's very important that people ask the right questions and do the right checks to make quite sure that what they think they've actually got.
Indeed. And so given that I work in the industry and we actually do vaulting as well, it's a constant question for us as well with our clients as well. So now, again, just to reiterate, we're not making allegations, but what we're going to do is someone posted on my LinkedIn profile with some sort of suggestion about the Perth Mint. Now, again, I have no interest in the Perth Mint, and I have no reason to harm the Perth Mint, but I think it's just important that we just post this, and this person lists his name and his place of employment, and so we're just going to put this on the screen. People can read what this individual had to say about the Perth Mint and what he experienced when he went to do an audit of his legal property. And we'll just leave the Perth Mint situation there, and people can draw whatever conclusion they want. Now, when it comes to ABC Bullion, there was on Wall Street Silver on Reddit, there was a woman who watches this show, The Interest of the People. She goes by the name of Julie G. Silver, and she made a specific allegation about ABC Bullion that when she asked for her property, the property was not there. Now, we're going to put that post up there on the screen for people to see, because it's already I've already retweeted it. It's gone right around the world, and so a lot of Americans and Canadians are in particularly interested in this ABC Bullion issue. Now, all I can say is, one, she watches this show. Two, she's contacted me. I've had several discussions with her. She has presented to me several artifacts about her situation. They are concerning, in my personal opinion. What I will say is that the allegation that Julie G. Silver makes is different to what ABC Bullion has presented in the public square. So there is a dispute as to what actually happened and why. And Julie G. Silver is looking at her legal options. So again, don't want to take that conversation any further than that. But just to say that we talked about in the last show about synthetic risk.
Yep.
Now we're saying that there's a different type of risk, which is when you have legal property and you entrust it to someone to hold. Is there an issue with that person holding it? Are you going to get it back when you actually want it? And so some people have been making some very interesting comments about the Australian market, and obviously, particularly in the context of this Julie G. Silver, when you have someone so public saying what she said, it does really drive, it does shake confidence right across the country in terms of not just this one organisation, but obviously in terms of the organisation I work for. We have had some of our customers to say, well, now that we have allegations with another firm, how can we be sure that you are also being honest in terms of what your commitment to our, in terms of vaulting, etc. So look, and I'm sure you could say that for any sort of financial scandal or financial allegation, once one allegation is made, everyone starts to sort of ask questions about the entire industry, about what practices are being implemented and they're being adopted, and what's the level of trust that we should place in various institutions.
We've said on a number of occasions, and we'll just underscore it again, right, that there are risks pretty much in any investment class, right?
That's right.
Almost any category. There is no such thing as a completely safe option, right? So it's about trade-offs and relativities, but it's also critically important that you ask the right questions and you basically go in with your eyes open and awareness of what may happen, because a lot of people have been lured into safe investment options that are not actually very safe and have risks that are not clear attached to them. And of course, with all of this stuff, until it goes wrong, nobody ever knows. Right?
Correct.
And that's the problem. So the concern I've got is you won't know what the true situation is until the tide goes out and the demand for silver goes up or whatever it is, right? At that point, it's too late.
Yes. And the thing is, and what you just said is what you and I have been talking about in the context of bail-in.
Yep.
When things are fine, things are fine. But when things become awry, how solid is your deposit? How solid is your gold or silver holding? How solid is your mortgage, or whatever the case may be?
Bitcoin holding.
Of course. Look, yeah. So I mean, now a lot of people sort of ask me questions about crypto when I get emails, etc. But that whole space has a whole host of risks which, to be honest, really haven't been tested, because cryptos haven't actually faced a like they haven't faced a technological or financial crisis that would actually see, well, what happens now. When it comes to other investment classes, because we have a long history with real estate, with gold and silver, with the share market, we have an understanding of, in different contexts, how these asset classes occur. But obviously, again, there is risk with everything. And one thing that I have found to be quite surprising as I've traveled this journey with you, Martin, is that I always think about risk, because I always think about, I always hope for the best and prepare for the worst. I always think about what happens if this happens, what happens if that happens, and how do I mitigate those risks. And what I tend to find, and we discussed this in a recent show, is particularly when it comes to signing 7-figure mortgages,
Yes.
people are not asking themselves those questions. People are just making decisions, and there is an element of unsophistication in terms of naivety, potentially in terms of ignorance of people not doing their homework. And again, you do have to spend quite a bit of time trying to understand what you're getting yourself into financially, because if things go well, but if things go bad, and you haven't done your due diligence, that can lead to catastrophic financial outcomes.
Absolutely. It's really important to ask the right questions. And frankly, if there's a certain amount of content on a website, right, you need to actually make sure that that's really the complete picture, because quite often it's only just a summary, right? Quite often there'll be other stuff tucked away in other areas. And again, people don't often understand the difference between unallocated versus allocated, all those things that we've been touching on, right? And I know we're making it sound complicated, right? But there's a reason why we need to actually highlight this stuff. It's because it is potentially complicated and risky, right? And people are actually going into things without fully understanding the potential risks of their entry into it. And that's what we're trying to underscore.
Yes.
Very important conversation. And, just to reiterate again, in the interest of the people, it's really important that you do your homework, ask those risk questions, and make the best possible decisions you can on the back of it.
100%.
Martin North, John Adams, in the interest of the people. We'll see you next time.